All right, welcome back, class. This is Mr. Paredes, and we're into Module 2 now, which is multiplying and dividing integers. All right, so what we're starting off with in this video is Lesson 2.1, Multiplying Integers. All right, so we're going to look at example number 1 here, multiplying integers using a number line. Frankie ran the football 4 times in the last game, losing 2 yards each carry. How many yards did Frankie finish the game with? Okay, normally we would say 4 times 2 to find out how many yards he finished with, right? He ran 4 times and he lost 2 yards each play. But since he lost 2 yards each play, it's a negative 2. So 4 times negative 2. So to graph negative 2, we'd have to start at 0 and move 2 units to the left because it's negative, right? We have to go to the left. So going to my graph here on the bottom, my number line, I'm going to start at 0 and I'm going to go 2 units to the left. That takes me to negative 2. However, he did this 4 times, right? So that's 1. Then I move 2 units again. That's 2, 3, 4. So now we have 4 negative 2's, right? So I went negative 2. I had to add that negative 2. Then I had to add another negative 2. Then a third negative 2. And finally, the last negative 2, right? For 4 negative 2's. So that means I can write this problem here as negative 2 plus negative 2 plus negative 2 plus negative 2. Okay? So to graph 4 times negative 2, we start at 0, move 2 units to the left 4 times, right? Because it's 4 times negative 2. If I added all of these up together, I'd get negative 8. On the number line, when I moved all the way back from 0, and I ended up at negative 8. So the result is negative 8. So Frankie finished with negative 8 yards. All right, so for example number 2, we're modeling integer multiplication. So in this one, we want to find the product of negative 3 times negative 4. Okay, so we're going to rewrite this equation and take the negative 3 out of the parentheses, which is the opposite of positive 3 times negative 4. Okay, so using negative counters, I'm going to model 3 times negative 4, right? Positive 3 times negative 4. So in doing that, I need 3 groups of negative 4. We have 1, 2, 3 groups. They're all negative, right? And this would equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 negative counters, right? Which is basically negative 12. All right. Now, in step 2, we want to make the same model using positive counters to find the opposite of positive 3 times negative 4. So this one, we would do the opposite of what we did on the first one, the first model, which gives us 3 groups of positive 4. So 1, 2, 3 groups. They're all positive. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we have 12 positive counters this time, which is just positive 12. Okay, so when we translate that, that means negative 3 times negative 4 is a positive 12. So the product is positive 12. Okay. Now, on the next example, I'm going to do a few equations to show you how to solve these multiplication problems without using the counters or the number line. Okay. And hopefully it'll kind of clear up a little bit of misunderstandings that you may have. Okay, so looking at example 3, multiplying integers. Okay, you're not always going to be able to use a number line or counters. Sometimes numbers are just going to be too large to be able to do that, right? You're not going to have enough room to make that big of a number line. You're not going to have enough room to make that many counters, or maybe it's just too much to do it in the first place, right? So here are some rules when multiplying integers. The product of the two integers with opposite signs is negative. The product of two integers with the same sign is positive. The product of 0 and any other integer is 0. Okay, so we're going to do 3 multiplication problems here following those rules. So when I multiply 13 times negative 3, okay, I can multiply this just by doing the absolute value of each and multiplying those together by just making them positive numbers, right? 13 times 3, that would give me 39. Okay, now that first rule says the product of two integers with opposite signs, and this would follow that, right? We have a positive 13 and a negative 3. The answer is going to be negative. So that means 13 times negative 3 is negative 39. Okay? So let's look at part B here. Negative 5 times negative 8. So same thing. I can use my absolute value for both, which would give me a positive 5 times positive 8. When I multiply those together, I get 40. Okay? Now, this rule here states that when I multiply two numbers that have the same sign, the answer is going to be positive. So that means negative 5 times negative 8 is positive 40, right? Because they're both the same sign. For part C, I have negative 10 times 0. Well, the product of 0 and any other integer is always 0, right? So even though it was a negative 10, 10 times 0 gives me 0. So it doesn't matter that it's a negative 10 times 0. It's going to be 0, right? So going back, I want to just show you a little trick that you can always draw on your paper to help you solve some of these equations from time to time, right? So I would make a triangle, and I have two negative signs and a positive sign, right? You can call it your Dorito, you can call it a pizza, whatever you want to call this triangle, or just your multiplication triangle, whatever you decide, right? But I have two negatives, one positive for each corner. Now, typically when you do this, you would cover up whatever sign. So for part A, I have a positive 13 times a negative 3. So I would cover my positive and the negative. And what are we left with? A negative, right? So that means a positive times a negative is negative. And if we did it for part B, two negatives, right? So now I want to cover my two negatives. What am I left with? A positive. So that means a negative times a negative is positive. All right, and this always works. Okay, obviously two positive numbers, when you multiply them, you're going to get a positive. All right, but that's just another method that you can always use. And it's helped a lot of my other students. So it was a very helpful method to learn. So feel free to use. All right, guys, so that's it for lesson 2.1. Feel free to use this video. Watch it as many times as you need to. Obviously, in class, we'll go over it more in depth and you'll be able to ask questions, things like that. This video will help you with basically all of 2.1. I hope it was helpful for you and I hope you enjoyed watching it. And as always, you guys take care.